Here we have the best and worst of D&D love stories. You want to share your romantic story, your love story, your very delicious details? Well, you can do so in the comments below. I was a J-Bryn beguiler, 3.5, with a 20 charisma score. Pretty stereotypical fare. He was devilishly charming, very mischievous, and tended to enjoy the most destructive path to achieving his goals. Our party was fighting to bring down the alchemists who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and built towers in every major city. They were helping people, but very clearly pursuing their own sinister ends. Turns out they had a lot of very large bombs. After we had done enough damage to be considered a threat, the alchemists hired an assassin to take us out. Her first move was to blow up the thing we were trying to blow up, but while we were still in it. Now, typically, I'm not one for RP romance, but this was just too perfect a match for Algernon, my character, to ignore. So, I started flirting with her while simultaneously trying to skewer her with my rapiers, dominate her into walking straight into our fighter's hammer, and generally blow her up before she could blow me up. At first, she ignored me, but then I think my DM saw an opportunity for some comedic and endearing development. We started a fantastic relationship where she would leave little hearts for me with bombs underneath them, and I would write her love poems with exploding runes. It culminated in me taking her to a masquerade ball, or her taking me more accurately, where we spent a rather romantic evening pretending we weren't fully aware that the other had some glorious coup planned for the night. After a very romantic dance, she leaned in and whispered, "Goodbye, my love." I don't fully know what her next plan was because I managed to react quickly enough to cast Shocking Grasp mid-embrace. It didn't hurt much, but it staggered her enough for the rest of my party to avoid a surprise attack. Several explosions and a long battle later, she lay dying in my arms and whispered that she'd see me on the other side. Then the explosive she had strapped to her thigh went off, knocking me to -9 HP. Good times overall. One of my players tried a cheesy pickup line on a god. He used the whole "Did it hurt when you fell from heaven" one. Problem was, unknown to him, she was literally a fallen angel that had reascended to godhood. So it was just a deep-cut insult to her. She glared at him, and he took 5 glaring damage. Good times. Playing a tiefling swashbuckler, I had to investigate some allied NPCs who were rumored to be spies. I randomly went for the bard, a real ladies' man, posing as a fan, and I couldn't stand him. But on the flip side, he was really impressed at how easily I deceived him, and I liked that he didn't judge me for my race. Well, he stuck around, and things got friendlier. To get at the party, the big bad evil guy kidnapped him, cut out his tongue in front of me, and tortured him for weeks. Cue a desperate rescue attempt, and once the tongue was restored, endless declarations of love. Our party accidentally ran the town elders out, so the constable took over. The DM mentioned he was issuing everything from marriage to hunting licenses, and I asked, is he issuing gay marriage license too, or is he like the Kim Davis of this town? The DM rolled for the constable's Kinsey scale, and of course, he was all about free love. Well, naturally, I tried flirting with him to get some information. A strapping young monk like me must be his type, right? Several failed persuasion rolls later, I had apparently sexually harassed the constable. I was playing a dwarven bard looking for a caravan that had disappeared. An NPC half-orc was one of the last people to see them alive. I bought her a few drinks and made some very nice rolls to get the information out of her, the last of which was a nat 20.
You know,
You're kinda cute for a dwarf girl. My party just died. Crap! Since then, the half-orc has saved our bacon twice, become an honorary deputy sheriff in the town we're working in, and helped my bard carry out justice on an abusive parent she discovered. The feelings aren't so one-sided anymore. I played a paladin who was relatively young and had never been with a woman before. He was very awkward around women in general. One of the assassins from the local guild, well, they took a liking to him. She kept making passes at him, but he always shied away. When they were out on a mission, he let her use his sleeping bag while he slept on the floor. Whenever we visited her home, she would panic, trying to hide daggers and other evidence of her job. One night, the inn we were staying at had only one room left, so she offered to share. We slept in the same bed, but I left my full plate armor on to keep anything from touching and tried to scoot away whenever she got close. Eventually, she got up, left the room, and came back with a can opener. Darn, she was really after you, and I loved that. I was playing a human knight trying to play the Game of Thrones, i.e. gain political influence. I met an NPC who was introduced as the daughter of a lord and the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Well, she seemed to take a liking to my character and wanted to join the party. She continued making romantic advances, and eventually the characters kissed before heading into a dungeon. I saved her from a bearded devil in said dungeon, and afterward she wanted to take it to the next level. Just as she said this, the party's ranger received a note saying she was a demon. He burst into the room, and I made a will save. I failed, and was dominated by the succubus. I then fought my party as they tried to save my life. In all, it doesn't matter. She was still hot. 10 out of 10 would do again. My rogue fell in love with our party's big bad evil guy. Once upon a time, there was a thief who led a small adventuring party. She thought quite a lot of herself, and her mouth usually worked faster than her brain. The group was moderately successful, but much less powerful than they thought they were. One day, they ran afoul of a particularly nasty necromancer. Now, this necromancer had plans to build a utopia, and she was going to have to break a few eggs to get it done. Our intrepid thief didn't care much for her ideas and wasn't shy about letting the necromancer know. The two crossed paths on multiple occasions, and while the necromancer was always one step ahead of the party, the thief always had a verbal jab ready to go. After the thief and her crew killed a dragon the necromancer had allied with, the necromancer arrived to ask them one more time to keep their noses out of her business. Well, instead of compliance, some choice words regarding her parentage were directed at the necromancer. She had been more than patient, but enough was enough. The necromancer snapped her fingers, and the thief was no more. Unfortunately for the necromancer, the party's wizard had acquired a resurrection scroll and brought the thief back to life. Less than pleased with being killed in such an inglorious fashion, the thief introduced the necromancer to her two favorite knives. The party celebrated, but the thief had come back changed. She was unsure of herself, her place in the world, and her whole worldview. She had never really fit in with the others, and now she felt completely alone and cut off from the rest of the party. She found escape in a magic cloak that transported her to the ethereal plane. While she was there, she was face to face with every person she'd ever killed, including the necromancer. The thief raged and stormed, cursed and hollered, threatened and taunted, but blaming the necromancer didn't bring her any comfort. Eventually, she lost all of her fight and instead just went there to think and to be away from the others. She realized she regretted the way things had turned out, and that maybe she could have been more tactful and averted all of this. She found a way to communicate and told the necromancer that she was sorry, and that if she ever made it back to the world of the living, the two should talk. Fast forward, one day, the thief walks into the party's castle and is informed by a very nervous guard that a guest has arrived and requested a meeting. The thief is truthfully not at all surprised to find the necromancer rummaging through some books in the party's library. The two have a quick chat and agree not to kill each other again, at least for the time being. Her plans ruined and with nowhere to go, the necromancer asks to stay at the castle. Well, the party decides that it's probably better to have her here than off doing God knows what and agrees to let her stay. Now, our thief is still feeling down. She's watching the world go by around her, just floating through it, completely disconnected. She's ostracized by the others for her thieving ways and almost wishes she had never come back. Desperate for some kind of meaningful interaction, she pays a visit to the necromancer. She's surprised to find that they have a lot in common. They grew up in the same city, have a similar sense of humor, and most importantly, have a, flexible code of morals. The necromancer is the only person in the castle who doesn't judge the thief for being herself. And what's more, as they talk, the thief learns the necromancer isn't at all evil. Her goals are quite noble, even if her implementation could use some work. The two get along well, and the rogue finds herself looking forward to her time with the necromancer every day. It isn't long before the thief comes to a rather shocking realization. She's developed feelings for her former arch-rival. After building up all of her nerve, the thief just decides to go for it. The rest, as they say, is history. The moral of the story is this: sometimes our biggest roadblocks to our own happiness are our own snap judgments, and always keep yourself on your wizard's good side. In our group, we have a fighter called Velderon, who was banished from the City Watch for being insane, though not before he had achieved quite a high rank. Before we go on any quest, he typically likes to go to the City Watch to report it to the commander, who simply just does not give a shit, and just wants the old crazy man who worked there before him to leave his office. The commander usually nods along until Velderon is done talking and then says something like, "You can do whatever you want as long as you don't kill anyone or bother me again." Velderon has quite the reputation. At the front desk of the City Watch, there is a half-dwarf, half-dragonborn lady named Xanif. She is very jaded, and the product of a lifetime of being sneered at and trodden upon. She hates everyone, but she especially hates Velderon. Now, Velderon, however, is in love with Xanif and has been trying to sweet-talk her for years, only to be met with cruel indifference. It's often very sad to witness, and it's been going on for a long time. Finally, Velderon set out on a quest and acquired some very fetching items. Upon his return, he asked the greatest smith in the land, who actually owed him a favor, to fit the gems into a fine sword. He then marched to the City Watch, went up to Xanif, and instead of demanding to see the commander as usual, he gifted her the sword. He used his greatest and most charming lines, critting his role, baby, and finally broke through her iron barrier of emotion. She invited him to be her date at the upcoming City Watch ball. Velderon cried, we all cheered, and nobody thought it would ever happen. This happened yesterday. My friend, whose character name is Atreyu, has a backstory where he was a pirate and, on one of his travels, slew a giant kraken. Naturally, this is his go-to story for trying to impress and woo the ladies. We were in a tavern, and he was doing pretty well. He rolled a good charisma check. but I wanted to play wingman. So I walked over and said, "Oh my god, are you Atreyu, the Atreyu, who slew the Kraken?" The DM asked me to make a check, and I failed it. The woman he was wooing immediately looked at me, then Atreyu, and said, "You know, for a second, I honestly believed you. But obviously this is some kind of joke that I won't be a part of." I just cock-blocked my friend. A standard story of one-night stand RPG woe. The party liked to go to bars since we sucked at role-playing and just played ourselves with weapons, essentially. We didn't have a real established enemy yet, but had dealt with some cults who kept summoning demons. Occasionally, we ran into one blending in. Our party ninja, Charisma 20, was tearing up the dance floor, baby, and hitting on chicks, but kept rolling below 5. On one roll, the girl she was hitting on seemed oddly interested. Out of game, the party assumed she had failed her sense motive or something, so we continued drinking and whatnot. The next morning, we found the ninja's body drained of all life force. Turns out she picked up a succubus. We never even gave a second thought to the screaming. Oh my god, there was screaming and you ignored it? Hey, don't rock the boat, baby. Hey everyone, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know what are some of the best and worst of your D&D love stories. And of course, if you ever want to help support the channel, we would love, absolutely love, to have you join our membership program. You get early access to videos, and a little bit more later down the line, we're workshopping it. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time. Toodaloo for now.